I think if you go back, Hallie, and you probably have them all memorized and looked at every speech that Vice President Pence ever gave, I don't know if he ever said and had any speech that did not mention in quite flattering terms President Trump. And yet now he has chosen on this final day to come here for the inauguration of the new president as opposed to attending the going away party at Joint Base Andrews that President Trump had organized.
In speech after speech, Savannah, the vice president didn't just mention his boss, President Trump. He would go out of his way in very lavish terms to give him the credit for whatever the vice president was there to conduct the business of. That's the kind of relationship that they had, loyal every single step of the way until January 6th. And it began when the vice president was back here at the Capitol. He was here for that counting of the Electoral College vote. And throughout the hours that he was in a secure room, according to sources that I've talked to, President Trump did not once reach out to the vice president. And it sounds like he is several leaders getting introduced here at the west front of the Capitol. At no point did President Trump reach out. That angered the vice president. He spoke about that to some of his friends and colleagues about how after all of this, after all the loyalty, this is what happens as the president was then sending out angry tweets about the vice president. It is so significant that he is here today. He actually left a letter, we understand, from a White House official for Vice President-elect Kamala Harris at the White House. We know, of course, based on our team's reporting, that President Trump also left a note for President-elect Biden. That, we're told, was left in the Oval Office by an aide at some point. So that is waiting, of course, for the President-elect when he arrives. And we're watching now this split-screen moment. I'm not sure if we have a shot of Air Force One arriving down in South Florida. That is where President Trump will call home for the foreseeable future. And down at Mar-a-Lago, you have about 100 of the president's supporters who have lined the route. As we see right now, this split screen, he is now going to be disembarking, getting off the plane for the last time as Air Force One. And he will be greeted by some of his supporters who have gathered for him there in Palm Beach. A very different scene than what we're seeing here at the west front of the Capitol, where there have been glimpses of bipartisanship. Congressman Jim Clyburn, for example, taking selfies with Congressman Steve Scalise. You had the Bushes walking immediately over to Clyburn, for example. Supreme Court justices, including Justice Sotomayor here, she will be the one who will be swearing in Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. A real moment of first, the first Latina Supreme Court justice, and of course the first woman of color to become the vice president. As we see the vice president and his wife now come out on the balcony. To a round of applause as I look behind me here. Everybody standing and watching Vice President Mike Pence and Karen Pence as he assumes those traditional roles. He was here. He was the one delivering that speech in the moments after the insurrectionists took over at the Capitol. Once the all clear was given, it was Vice President Pence who came out and said democracy must prevail. It was Vice President Pence who returned to the Capitol to thank those National Guard troops that have moved in, not President Trump. It was the Vice President who over the last 4 days has been traveling, thanking the troops, and conducting the duties of the office. Savannah.
And Holly, that is the split screen that no one had exactly expected. Vice President Pence at the inauguration and the open door to Air Force One for the final departure of President Trump and the First Lady as they arrive in Florida.
56 minutes left in the term presidency, and it's remarkable. We talk about the transfer of power, and literally at 12 o'clock, 11:59. All the powers, all the weight, all the duties, nuclear codes, things that most of us don't have to think about on a daily basis.
现在大家看见这个已经是到了佛罗里达的这个特朗普的这个飞机啊，有可能马上特朗普就会出来。
Continue and arrangements have been made so that there will be continuity of government. And at the moment that the oath is sworn on the old Biden family Bible, in about an hour from now, we will have a new president. And perhaps as we look at this open door, President Trump is taking a long last look around and saying goodbye to some of the staff members who work on Air Force One, and certainly he's gotten to know over these last 4 years.
Certainly a journey that Donald Trump has made many times aboard this plane or its twin plane between Washington and Florida, spending a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago, and there is President Trump. elaborate send-off at Joint Base Andrews a few hours ago. We don't know what sort of greeting. We see the armored vehicle there right at the steps, so we don't. Well, we'll see what happens.
And yes, Melania Trump has changed into her Florida fashions for the occasion. She left Washington, and it's cold for the sunny skies of Florida, and has changed her wardrobe accordingly as they will drive off. But as you mentioned, 60 minutes and counting until we have a new president.
And what was it he said at the end of his remarks today? I'll be back in some form.
He said, I'll be back in some form. Absolutely, and definitely did not give any indication he plans to leave the political stage, but in what form that takes, we'll see. And now we see the Trump children descend the staircase, but this is the moment where the split screen goes away and all eyes go on the United States Capitol, because we are about to inaugurate a new president, and the seat of government and those who hold power in our government are ready. We've got 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices in attendance. The 3 oldest justices are not there because of pandemic concerns. We have congressional leaders, and we have about 1,000 guests, which is about a 20th of what normally would happen if there weren't a pandemic and these grave security concerns. But to our eyes, as you see the vice president there, it's all the trappings and all of the traditions that we would come to expect from an inauguration.
I'm wondering what his political future he may be pondering. Again, kept a higher profile, we'll say, over the last couple of weeks as we have struggled with what happened at the Capitol.
His fortunes have changed quite a bit, and again, as mentioned, there was no greater loyal ally to President Trump than Mike Pence, but because supporters of the president were led to believe that there was anything that could be done to change the election. And Vice President Pence did not do that because he did not possess the power to do it. Quickly, that support became chants of hang Mike Pence inside the halls of that building 2 weeks ago. And yes, that's Alex Rodriguez. For those who are wondering, he's also Mr. J-Lo. Jennifer Lopez is going to be performing at this inauguration.
I heard him interviewed somewhere yesterday talking about how nervous she is about, it's a tough venue.
Well, the Super Bowl is one thing, but this is indeed, and Lady Gaga is going to be performing the national anthem. So, again, you can't help but enjoy eavesdropping, at least with your eyes, on what's taking place at the Capitol. Former presidents milling about with congressional leaders and A-list celebrities, and the Biden family has come in now. We've got 3 former presidents, 6 Supreme Court justices, and untold members of Congress there as well.
Looking at President Obama, we're reminded, he kept his silence for much of the last 4 years, but down the stretch, he became a very powerful advocate and a powerful voice on behalf of Joe Biden.
That's Eugene Goodman, who has been given the honorary designation today of the acting deputy sergeant of arms. And if you're not familiar with his story, then we'll try to do it justice in these few moments we have. He's walking with Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff, and he has that point of honor because he was on duty, Capitol Police officer, on that day, January 6th. And as the mob approached, a camera captured his quick thinking as he led the mob away from what he knew to be an open door right into the Senate chamber. And in doing so, could have perhaps prevented untold harm. And he has been commended for that action, and there's talk of a Congressional Medal of Honor for him. And today he has the honor of escorting Doug Emhoff and soon-to-be Vice President Kamala Harris.
So many images of that day, and so many of them horrifying, but that was certainly one of bravery and quick thinking and all the things that we would hope in a horrible situation like that. And so Kamala Harris, Doug Emhoff will make their way to the door and will be officially announced and presented as they take their place for the inauguration and swearing in.
And perhaps it's a measure of our times and how the news cycle and there's so much history being made as we speak that we haven't really paused, Lester, to note that we will have the first female vice president in our nation's history in an hour, and a first Black American vice president, first Indian American.
The chief of inaugural
So there will be all kinds of history made today.
The acting deputy House Sergeant at Arms Kevin Grubbs and the acting deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms United States Capitol Police Officer Private First Class Eugene O. Goodman. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Debbie Harris, and Mr. Douglas Imhoff.
Joe Biden is Sam Villalobos there with President Obama and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris as she and her husband Doug Emhoff take up their position. It's worth noting that President-elect Biden has said he wants a relationship, a presidential, vice presidential relationship, not unlike the one he enjoyed with Barack Obama, in which he was always the last voice and the last person in the room at a time of great and important decisions.
Well, you make a good point because he is a boy to be president, but he's been vice president. So he knows all the highs and lows of that job. I mean, for a long time it was always joked that it was the worst job in Washington, that there was really no prescribed duties, but it's become in the last few administrations quite important, quite momentous. We mentioned Joe Biden. You have to mention Dick Cheney under President Bush, a hugely influential vice president. So Kamala Harris certainly will have that opportunity, and just the magnitude of what needs to be done when you're talking about an economic travails that this country is in, the pandemic. There's so much work to be done. It's really a two-person job, so we'll see if they are able to forge that kind of functioning relationship.
A lot of pride will be felt as we noted, the first woman of color will take the oath. She will take the oath first, we should note. Momentarily, we expect the introduction of the president-elect and Dr. Joe Biden. Their family there, as you can see, enjoying the moment, or trying to stay warm, or both. I'm going to assume they've got heaters up there on the platform.
Well, there's one good thing about masks. They do keep your face warm, so perhaps that's the one plus that they otherwise...
That's one getting another one.
I'll give you one, right? The other one is protection, of course. Yeah.
There is that.
Yes, protection from COVID. Let's bring in Chuck Todd and Andrew Mitchell, who are watching these images with us. And for all that has happened, at least these moments right now, Chuck, feel like the inaugurations that we've seen before and that hallmark of American democracy that people in this country have come to count on.
I'll be honest, this has been an elixir of sorts this the last hour, just to see the normalcy of people in both parties participating in this. I mean, look, it's a necessary elixir, and I think it, in many ways, is why Joe Biden won the election. It was sort of this feeling that if anybody can create a moment, a unifying moment, it's him, that he has the right, he just has the right perspective. He almost is, he's been through so much himself that gives him the right level of empathy the country is desperately looking for here. And I'll just be honest, this is just, it's nice to hear the patriotic music. I mean, we took some of this for granted until 2 weeks ago. I'll be honest. And so I have looked at all of this through a different set of eyes since January 6th today.
Yeah, I covered Congress for many years, and I've been up on that podium, and seeing this restores a sense that we're okay. We're going to be okay. The country's going to be okay. It's just extraordinary to see all of these leaders who've worked together. Now you had Mitch McConnell and others coming out. There is a bipartisan note. I saw a note earlier from Marco Rubio that the reason he is not here, and there you see the Bidens, Savannah, coming through. But Marco Rubio just quickly is saying that he's not here only because he is rushing to confirm Avril Haines, who had her confirmation hearing yesterday and overcome any Republican objections.
Vice
Savannah.
As we watch the president-elect, soon-to-be president, and soon-to-be first lady approach, and we saw the congressional leaders, I do think, Chuck, to pick up on what you were talking about, there is that almost feeling of defiance, institutional defiance. Congress saying, wait a minute, you attacked us 2 weeks ago, but just as they came in the late hours of the night and completed their business on January 6th, this is a continuation of that thread, their constitutional duty to inaugurate a new president at high noon, January 20th, that is written in our founding documents, and in 45 minutes it will happen, and it does feel like there's that defiance and determination on the part of Republicans and Democrats.
I want to share with you, Savannah, I want to pick up on this. I want to share with you, I talked to somebody who was pretty high up in the Bush administration a couple weeks ago. He said, I know you guys in the press are beating yourselves up, members of Congress are. He says, you know what? The guardrails did work over these last 4 years. They got bruised, they got beaten, and we've seen, but we're in some ways, and almost today itself is a reminder, as much as we thought, oh my God, look how vulnerable our system is to sort of crumbling. A lot of the institutions, while they were battered and bruised, whether it's ours in the press or Congress or other institutions, they worked. They held up. And this person said to me, you know what? I don't want to share his name because it would just give that person a lot of problems. But he sort of said, you know what? In 20 years, we may look back at this in the same way we look back at the McCarthy years and say, you know what? The system worked. We weeded it out. And this morning, right now, is a reminder, our guardrails did hold up.
The weather may be a different story. We're seeing a few little snow flurries out there. And we're starting to see some of the introductions, more congressional leaders coming in. I'm squinting at the screen to see what we can identify. But any moment now that we know that President-elect Biden and soon-to-be First Lady Dr. Jill Biden are on the move inside the Capitol and about to make their big entrance.
And we're going to hear remarks shortly from Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri on behalf of the Inauguration Committee.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and Dr. Jill Biden. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does, goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible. My friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda until I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election, with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment, people all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the President-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag. Gracious and merciful God,
Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the
the City of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking down that Ribbon Highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, oh, this land. This land was made for you and me.
The sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus has silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause.
我尽量给大家翻译一下吧，这个水平也是有限，然后我这个手机也快没电了，等会儿如果直接停的话，就说明没电了啊。愤怒等等。就说很多这个美国现在问题啊，他现在说这个 unity 的重要，就是说团结的重要性。我们可以让这个我们的孩子，还有这个大家回到工作岗位，就是战胜这个病情疫情之后。就可以让美国再次成为世界上的这个领头羊、领导。这个是归向。说美国的历史啊，其实是一个挣扎的历史。
Ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization.
就是说各种的这个种族主义啊，一些这个负面的东西。
The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured.
说胜利来之不易。说911，还有这个世界大战等等。说好的天使最终能胜利，这个是彭斯。只要我们足够多的人能够团结在一起向前进，
show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries but as neighbors.
就是说不把大家当成敌人，而是当成这个邻居朋友。
Stop the shouting and lower the temperature.
降温，不要对大家这个相互使劲喊。
No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge.
这是现在历史性的时刻呢，就是一直在说 unity， 就说团结。这个是这个凯文麦卡锡，是这个共和党的头在众议院之中。就是说，只要团结，我们就再也不会失败了。所以今天、现在这个时刻，Kamala Harris， 我们应该这个尊重对方。就是不同意见不应该成为这个作战的理由。这是克林顿夫妇也来了，小布什夫妇。彭斯今天也是没有去送这个特朗普，说美国比这个要强。就是说，过去4年非常这个乱的这种状态。这个大家可以看到，其实也是有 social distance 的，尽可能离得比较远一些，就是2个人1个座位。今年这个安保确实非常强啊，就怕这个有人闹事儿。现在说这个马丁路德金的《我有一个梦》。哎呦，大家看这块都是基本上全封锁了呀，没有人了，没有行人。
We mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change.
说这个 Kamala Harris 也创造历史。
Across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground.
又说这个1月6号这个川粉攻占国会的事儿了，当初就是在这儿攻占的。2周之后啊，现在这个拜登在同样的地方是上任了，在国会面前，这个2周之前同样的地方呢，全都是川粉把这个给攻占了。他说我非常谦虚。
Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. If you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy.
他说，对于反对我的那些人，这个，如果你仍然不同意我的观点的话，那就应该这样了，因为这就是这个民主就是这么运作的，就是得接受这个选举胜利和失败。他说我会是成为所有美国人的总统，也是在讽刺这个特朗普。这是这个第一夫人，现在是。他说我会为那些支持我和不支持我的人一起奋斗。
Wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love.
这个今天拜登的演讲貌似是这个没有提词器的，应该是下面有这个笔记，但是大部分时间呢还是在自己直接说的。这个貌似并不是说一直在看这个稿啊。 大家可以看到很多美国大兵啊，现在也是这个严阵以待，就怕有人闹事儿或者有炸弹什么的。今天早晨，这个美国的最高法院已经有炸弹威胁，已经是这个撤离了。
Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs.
我不知道我这个手机还有多少电啊？现在应该也就是5%左右了。如果等会儿直接没有的话，那就是这个就自动结束了。欢迎大家给我的视频点赞啊，一起见证历史。
Distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against.
他说我们必须要结束这场不文明的战争。
Rural versus urban.
他的说话还是有一点这个偶尔的这个口吃啊，因为他这个年轻的时候就是口吃，也是花了很大努力才这个克服了这个口吃。
And if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes.
说就像我妈说的，你要站在其他人角度来思考问题。
There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand, there are other days when we're called to lend a hand.
他说有的时候我们是需要别人帮助，有的时候我们能帮助别人。我们国家就会变得更好。美国朋友们就是说这个我们接下来工作需要对方来配合。现在我们面对着最致命的这个病毒，这个是 Cory Booker， 也是这个民主党总统候选人初选，但是很早就退了。第一夫人 Jill Biden。他说，早晨到来的时候呢，这个阳光就会到来，我们会一起经历这些，战胜这些。这个是归向 Mitch McConnell， 他的老婆这个赵小兰。他说：“我想给那些这个跟我不一样观点人说呢，美国受过挑战，但是呢，就是表现比较好。不仅仅是这个之前的、昨天这些挑战，也包括今天和明天挑战。这是美国的这个国民自卫队的严阵以待。”在这个Memorial 就是那个池子前面，说我们会成为相互信任的这个伙伴。Bernie Sanders 也会成为这个参议院的一个委员会的头，是这个国家预算委员会的，因为这个。每一届国会的各个委员会的头全都是由这个多数党担任。就给所有的人这个喊话，如果你这个失去了亲人，我们一起为他们来默哀。所以现在是这个默哀的时刻呀，也是这个祈祷的时刻，就是 pray。
Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing.
朋友们，这是一个考验我们的时刻，攻击我们的民主。就说各种这个 challenge， 各种挑战，什么包括环境、气候的挑战。我们一起来面对这个问题。
Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up all of this? It's time for boldness. For there's so much to do.
现在是一个需要大胆的时刻，有勇气的时刻。
I promise you.
我向你们承诺，
You and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era.
我们会一起来看如何这个处理好这个最大的这个危机疫情。这是非常困难的时刻，但是我们有一个义务，就是把这个世界呢，更好的世界传给我们的子孙。我们会书写这个美国更好的篇章。
That stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you.
他说：“美国，我给了你最好的，我能够给的。”
To the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us,